not easy. Like, it is not easy. You are going to put your heart and soul into this. If it's going to work, it's time, it's effort, it's money. It's like, do not go into it thinking it's easy, because it's not. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Let's just go and see the world and just show them what it really means to live life golden. Yeah, we're golden, baby girl, we're golden.
Hal, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How nervous are you?
I'm proud. Do I seem nervous?
Nah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I feel pretty nervous.
So Hal is someone, we actually crossed paths and kind of knew each other from back in the day in Port Melbourne.
It was the gym, wasn't it? Yeah. You used to train at the gym.
And I remember all of a sudden, just like, I think I moved away from the gym, and maybe potentially you had too. And then I stumbled across South Street and somehow made my way to your Instagram and kind of marrying the two. And I was like, wow. Because the clothing's amazing, so congratulations. But you know, I reached out because I thought, you know, just seeing the journey, you know, like, because especially over the last 2 years, what you do on Instagram, you kind of keep an eye on people and so on. But I just thought, wow, this thing's really building some legs. And, you know, I obviously reached out to say hey and see if you wanted to come on the podcast. But as we went on and kind of started talking a bit more, you've got quite a story. So I thought, why not we'll bring you on and we'll kind of tell that story. But what I'll do is I'll get you to give yourself a bit of an intro
Sure.
and a little bit about South Street as well.
Cool. So my name is Harley. I am the owner and founder of South Street. Also the head designer. We've now got another assistant designer, but design most of the clothes, and I'd like to call myself probably the creative director as well, to be a little bit fancy. So sort of I take charge of anything creative to do with South Street. That's me. So the marketing, the website, anything on Instagram, and South Street.
So how long has South Street been in business for?
So it's about 2.5 years now. So we launched February 19th, I think 5 p.m. So about 2.5 years.
5 p.m. Remember?
Yeah. I remember that night. Honestly, like that night changed my world.
Let's go there. So let's start there. Like, tell us. Actually, no. We'll go back to the start, right? So, we obviously talked a lot about your story, and do you want to talk a little bit about, I guess, what happened before South Street? So, what were you doing before that, and kind of the lead up?
So, whole life absolute shopaholic. That's it. Like, any bit of money I had, it wasn't savings, it was clothes. Even to the point where I had probably like negative in my bank. You know when you used to have sort of negative $10 in your bank? And me and my brother would go shopping, and I used to say to Sam, like, oh, there's these jeans, can you buy these for me and I'll pay you back as soon as I get paid? So my lovely brother, he would. So ever since from a young age, it was always clothes shopping. But I went down the path of science. I studied biochemistry at Deakin University for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I moved to Australia, and I sort of got the first job out of uni. I was so sick of uni at the end of it, just sort of no money studying. So the first job, which is in IT, that was sort of like a decent paying job. For the first year, it was okay, you know, sort of because you're finding your feet in sort of corporate, and you're learning a lot. But towards the end, I think I was there for 3 years, I absolutely hated it. It was very, very, very corporate, very sort of male-dominated environment, and it just wasn't fulfilling. I wasn't getting what I wanted from it. I always knew I was sort of meant for more, wanted more. I think I got to a point where I started looking for other jobs. I went to a few interviews and actually got accepted for these jobs, but didn't take them. So I'm like, if I take this job, it's going to be the same. I'm going to be in the same rut in a year later. I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. And that's when I sort of, I think that's when I started getting pretty active on Instagram and seeing all the fashion and Pinterest. I was like, what would I really want to do? And it was fashion, it was designing clothes. And I remember buying, this is embarrassing, but buying like a pack of, I think it was like 100 pack of felt tips and like a scrapbook, and I just started designing clothes, like drawing, colouring them in with felt tips. And then just started, I don't know, it just kind of just grew from there. I stopped, then I restarted. And then I think just something inside me was just like, just do it, just do it. So then I literally spent every waking moment just working on South Street until it eventually came live.
So, I mean, can we talk about your previous work history and kind of go into that. So you said something, something that we've been pretty passionate about, and especially just myself as a male, trying to learn, I think something that's come to light for me over the last couple of years is things such as equality and even things like racism. Like I reckon had a realization maybe 18 months ago that this shit was real, and especially like around females in the workplace and equal opportunity, even things like equal pay. And it's interesting, and it comes from conversations you have with people around you. So, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about the fact that, he was saying that, how things should be is that the best person for the job should always be picked. And I was kind of like, well, that's not how things actually happen, though. Yeah, like, because there's biases that come. As a society, we haven't. That's not how it's been. It's actually, and one thing for me is like, it's these things have been wired into us from such a young age, and from how society acts. And I think that your story of what you told me was kind of like, that's, and we spoke to Danielle about this as well, was like, the experiences that she's had in the workplace as well. So, you don't have to, you can go as far as you want with that, but, sure. I would love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the company I worked for, so I think there was I went in there thinking there was a lot of opportunity, and I get along really well with guys, don't get me wrong, like probably have more guy friends than I do female friends, but the company was very, I just probably don't know if I can say that, but it was pretty sexist. So in fact, I always wear baggy clothes. It's me, that's South Street. It's very like oversized. I used to go to work still, wearing pretty much what South Street is, like baggy shirts, baggy jeans, and the guys would say, you're a female, you're attractive, why aren't you wearing tighter clothes? And it even got to the point where my boss was like, use your sexuality to get clients, when we go out for drinks, whatever, telling me to sort of, play up to being a woman, act more sexy. He's like, we'd be in a meeting, whatever, and there'd be a client, and she'd be a female, and after we'd leave the meeting, we'd come over, be like, can you see how she's using her sexuality, what she was wearing, her skirt? And we're just being like, this isn't me, this is disgusting, and I think that's sort of how South Street started, or part of how South Street started is girls should be allowed to wear whatever they want, feel comfortable with what they're wearing, feel good wearing sweatpants, sweatshirt, baggy jeans, wearing whatever they want. And I even remember sitting in another meeting, and it was, my tattoos came into a play as well in the workplace. I remember, I think it was the sales manager and my CEO, and it was just us three in a meeting going over sales. And the sales manager started talking about my tattoos, and that stage I didn't have my hands tattooed, I think it was just my arm. And he made quite a negative comment. I remember just sitting there just being like, I shouldn't have to put up with this shit. And I think the day after I quit that job, I went and got my hands tattooed. And that was like a little victory for me, like stuff this corporate world.
Yeah, I think we've just moved past that as a society. And I mean, like, it's weird because there's so many layers to it, like there's that kind of scenario where it's quite it's quite evasive, right? It's quite in your face, it's quite like there, and you're like, well, what the fuck? Like anyone would say what the fuck to that, right now. But it's like, I think for me the realization is like, if I heard that 2 years ago, I'd be like, pigs, like, or like, what's going on? But then it's like, it's more the little things outside of that, and for me there's no discrepancy between the two. Like, just because one's further down the line or further over the line than the other doesn't mean that one should be let go and the other shouldn't, so
100%.
I think like, and that's again, like I want to create awareness around this. That's why we want to have the conversation. But I think the biggest realization for me is this stuff actually happens, and it still happens to this day, and it would still happen everywhere. And I think that there's a responsibility to have these conversations, to talk about these things as it relates to these kind of issues, women just should not be treated that way, like I think about my daughter, well, she's not born yet, but, my future daughter, and I go, man, if I could just get my hands on that guy, that person,
Since having my daughter as well, I think sort of what I've seen in workplaces I've worked in, and honestly, it's for her to grow up in this world, it's pretty scary.
For sure. And then, coming back to, obviously, because you mentioned that's how South Street was born. So, obviously, and it's so interesting. Like, this often happens in business. You often, you will be extremely passionate about things that have been born from your experiences.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I was a party animal back in the day when I was a kid.
Weren't we all?
Yeah, but I was like, so some people can like handle it,
Yeah.
and then some people, for me, it wasn't like, I would, drugs and party and alcohol and so on, but, more so, I just couldn't handle it, It was more during the week, like it was like
When you get some Monday and you feel
and like I just couldn't function properly, you know what I mean? And it also started to lead to other things as well, right? But there were certain conversations that I had that allowed me to start to value conversations, and then that's kind of where we are now, it's all about conversations that can be life-changing for people.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to talk a little bit about those experiences that you went through and how that started to mold? Because I know you mentioned it a little bit, but the vision and the story behind South Street.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess it was just extremely unhappy in my job, and I sort of started working on South Street. Started spending sort of every waking moment on South Street, and before work, after work. I remember getting off the train, like running back home so I could get back on Google and start researching. And I remember going out for work drinks, and just this whole company, they were just so unsupportive of like your dreams and your desires. We're going out drinking, and I used to go for one drink, be like, I'm going to go home, I'm going to start working on this. And they're just the shit you'd get for wanting to leave and not wanting to drink. And it was sort of the same in my friend circle. When I started South Street, I lost a lot of friends because I stopped drinking, I stopped going out. And you probably would have known me from back in the Port Melbourne days. I was a massive party animal, sort of every Friday, Saturday night. And I kind of just, when I started working towards South Street, I just knew there was more to life than just drinking, partying. So I started saving everything I had. I stopped shopping. I stopped shopping for a full year. Stopped drinking, stopped socialising, like literally just put my heart and my soul into South Street. Remember being up sort of till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then I'd wake up at 6, go to work, do it all again. But I wasn't tired. You're just so hungry for something else. And then I got to the point where during work time, I started working on South Street as well. So whenever the boss wasn't around, I just didn't care anymore. I just wanted out. And then I got to the point where I was ready to launch. And I think I took that day off work as a sickie and continued to get everything ready for the website. And then 5 o'clock, 5:30 that night, went live. I think it's just.
And I remember you having a conversation. You mentioned that it was a conversation with your father.
Yeah.
That actually kind of spurred you to actually take the leap and go, no, fuck this. I'm going all in.
So I think.
Harlow, just move this a little bit closer. Yeah, there you go.
Is it all right?
Yeah, better.
So they're a little bit big. So I think it was a month in of starting South Street, and I was an emotional wreck. I'm not a crier at all, but I was literally crying every day. I was so tired, so exhausted. My boss, the CEO, he got a whiff that I think I was doing something else on the side. So he started being a bit of an asshole as well.
No, you're right. I was just on mine.
I remember just going to work, and I was just so sort of drained from it. And when you first launch your business, first launch your brand, there's initial rush because all your friends, your family, and everyone, they're all buying. And then like sort of day 3, day 4, the sales just drop, and you're sort of waiting all day for a sale, and you just feel so deflated. I can't explain that feeling. It's like you go from cloud 9 to just almost being like depressed because you're not making sales. But I kept at it, and I remember honestly just talking to my dad every day, and he's just like, just keep driving, keep pushing. So I just kept doing it, kept pushing. Then there'd be like times home on the train, I'd see there's 8 people active on the store. I'm like, oh my God, there's 8 people on the store. And just feeling just this euphoric feeling. And then you get a sale, and it'd just be a day made. Just be like, yeah. And then you do it all over again the next day. And then, oh my God, see, I've completely lost where I was going with that.
No. So you're talking about, kind of talking about the conversation that you had with your father and the early days of South Street.
And then it kind of got, so it was a month of there of just pushing, getting sales. And then it was kind of the breaking point at work. I had an argument with my boss. It was a really nasty argument. I remember just bursting into tears, emotional. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Straight away, I called my parents, and Dad's never one to say quit or quit your job. He's always like, never quit something until you got something else to go back into. And at the time, I wasn't making enough at South Street to go out on my own. Mm-hmm. But I think he could just see this rut I was in, that I was extremely unhappy. South Street was taking up a lot of my time as well. And that's when I had the conversation with him. He just like, quit your job, take a month off, put 100% into South Street, then start looking for more work. Because at that stage, we were kind of like, even he was a bit doubtful that South Street was going to work at that stage. It was a lot of work, a lot of energy, and I don't think he'd seen, he'd been involved in a company like that working before. A lot of people want to start clothing brands, and a lot of people fail starting brands. So I took a month off, and I just put 110% into South Street. And within a month, that's when I rented my first warehouse. So I never went back to work for another corporate company.
That's amazing. I think it really talks to the fact, and we kind of talked about this before, but like, you got to really do stuff that excites you and stuff that you're passionate about. Like, because like you're right. Yeah, when you said before, like you don't get tired, like it's interesting. Like there's times where I'm exhausted. Yeah. And there's times where I'm doing the exact same amount of work. I'm getting up at the same time. And, like I'm going through one of those phases now. Like, I didn't leave here last night till 9 o'clock. I was up at 4:30 this morning, got here at about 6:30, and I'm like on top of the world. So I think like it really does talk to like your ability to actually focus on what you're passionate about, focus on the things that excite you. And I think like even, your ability to take the leap as well, like, because that's a big thing. Like, I'm sure that you would have been scared.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you would have been, and because it's like you studied, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
To spend 2 years in the workforce, and all of a sudden you're going to go into something completely different that has nothing to do with what you studied, and you've got to take that risk. And more importantly, without a job or like, that support and stability. But sometimes that's what you need.
Yeah. 100%. Like
what's your vision for South Street from here then? So, what was more importantly, what was your vision at the start? Like, because obviously there's a certain fashion, and I know you mentioned before about what they thought you should wear, at your old workplace compared to what you enjoyed wearing. So, what was your vision at the start for South Street from a fashion standpoint, but also like a philosophy standpoint?
Yeah, so it's funny because my first ever vision, and actually the first round of samples that came in, it was almost it was playing on that girls should be able to wear oversized and feel good with whatever they're wearing. There's enough pressures in life for women and men, of course, without having to worry about what they're wearing as well. They should sort of conquer the world feeling comfortable. But another one of that was when I met you, was when I was like massive on the gym, absolutely loved the gym. And it was about, because I was so busy as well, it was about making a brand that you could wear to the gym and then sort of like wear to brunch, go shopping.
Yeah.
So it's like that athleisure sort of wear, bit of a mix. And then I got my first round of samples in, which were an absolute flop, honestly. Like I've still got them at home. I would never wear them. I would never want people to see them, but they're kind of like a little, my little trophy at home.
Yeah.
And I got them in, and then that's sort of like once you start the process, that's when you sort of learn. I was like, okay, that's not what I want to do. I want to go more into a bit more fashionable, a bit more sweatpants. And that at that time, that's when sort of like the oversized was coming into the UK. I feel like UK fashion's quite ahead of Australia.
Yeah.
And so the oversized sweatpants were coming in there, so like the boyfriend style sweaters, and that's the path went down. And then started the samples for them, got the first samples in. They were still horrific, but they were better than the first ones. And I was like, no, I can work with this, And then we did the third samples, and then that's sort of when I started seeing the vision, like this is going to be South Street.
Yeah. So it's funny, right? Because oversized has just gone crazy, So you would have got in right at the start. Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, right? Because there's probably people listening to this that want to get into apparel. And I think, without kind of, in retrospect, your ability to kind of look into the future and say, okay, well, this is where I think fashion's going to go. This is, you had an idea, it was from one of your experiences, but you also had to look at something like, UK and go, okay, well, they are ahead of us. Can I bring something like that over here? And can we start to go down that path?
Definitely.
What do you think, what are some of your biggest lessons then, across the journey? So you've grown a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I think you said you got 2 factories now.
We got one factory, so one main warehouse, and I've got my own sort of like design creative warehouse, and we've just opened up it's our second retail store, but we just closed the pop-up.
Cool, and it's in Chadstone?
Yeah, in
amazing.
Chadstone Shopping Centre. Yeah,
amazing.
Very exciting.
What are some of your biggest lessons, right, in business from here on in, and more maybe so in fashion as well?
Biggest lesson, probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and probably also one of the hardest things for me is, obviously I want South Street to grow, but with that you have to let go of some things. And South Street's it was my first baby. And I remember having, again with my dad, he's my absolute angel. I remember in lockdown last year, we're having dinner at the table, and we're talking about South Street and the growth and everything. And he's like, he could see how busy I was. I was doing everything. I was doing the marketing, the Instagram, packing orders still. I was, and he's just like, you're going to have to give some of this stuff up. He's like, potentially marketing first. And I remember we actually got into an argument. We didn't talk to each other for a week after that. I was like, there's no way I'm giving this up. This is my baby. I can do everything. He's like, Harley, as the business grows, you can't do everything. And we still laugh about the conversation today because now we're working with a marketing company. We've actually got a marketing girl in South Street doing all of that. So yeah, it's definitely letting parts of your baby go, because there's people that are better than you at stuff, and sort of sticking to what you're good at. And I think it's also that trusting people, so sort of letting go and trusting people that they're going to do the job just as well.
Because that's the other thing. Like you can potentially hire someone for a role, right? But your ability to, we were talking about this just before with our previous guest Jordan, but your ability to allow that person to self-actualize, right? So let them fulfill the role, let them reach their potential,
100%
build the environment that allows them to become their best self and do their best work. And
you're speaking the South Street language, because honestly that's everyone that we've employed. That's what we're doing. We're growing them through the company as well. So
what are because you've outsourced roles now, right? So is there any particular roles that because you've kept some yourself, and you obviously like the creative stuff, the design. Yeah. What was the process? Like, what was your first hire? What was your second hire? How did you kind of go about that?
Oh, I love this question. This is a good question. So first of all, what was it? So it was lockdown last year. Just before lockdown last year is when it sort of started getting really crazy. I remember I restocked a couple of products, and that night it just went crazy. I remember going to it next day being like, how am I going to pack all these orders? And yet again, my dad, my absolute angel, who they owned a business up in Queensland, he dropped everything and he flew down to Melbourne, and he just came in just to help me pack, just packing orders. I think it was like 500 orders a day, and we're just packing.
What a man.
Oh, he is, honestly. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy? We're talking about what we're talking about before, right? Where, we had a conversation with Al Roseby, CEO Managing Director of Country Road, and she kind of talked about women embracing other women, and what you can potentially help someone achieve by leaning into relationships and just being there for people and helping lift others up. But I often think, and I think about this personally as well, like what's my responsibility as a partner, as a father, and what can men do for women, right? Yeah. Because sometimes that support isn't there. But I think, your father's probably a good example of what you can do for other people and what other people can achieve when you're just 100% in their corner.
100%. And even like my mum, I give her my credit. So when Dad came down, he got, how long was our lockdown last year? Was it 7 months, 6 months?
Yeah, something crazy.
So my dad got stuck down here in lockdown for that whole time. And then my mum, bless her, was up in Queensland by herself. So just honestly, hats off to both of them for sort of doing that. I think they both found it really hard. Because me and my dad at that time, we were living together, we were working together. And I think it got 4 weeks in, and I said to Dad, I was like, you can't live here. Like, you need to go stay in an Airbnb because we're going to start killing each other. So we were, like, as much as we love each other, we were fighting because we're both very similar. So we were just headbutting, and he didn't like the way I was keeping the warehouse because there was boxes everywhere. And he tried, because I was so territorial of South Street back then, he'd try and move a box or label something, and I would just crack it at him. I was like, what are you doing? Like, this is my baby, don't touch it.
Yeah.
But we've come a long way since then. So it was Dad first, and he was probably my first proper employee. But he was only sort of like to help through that lockdown period.
Yeah.
Then he went back up to Queensland and he started just sort of helping like admin wise. And then all through as well, he's been my mentor. He's my biggest mentor. And then when he was down here, we hired to fill his position, which is our beautiful warehouse manager. So she's still with us today. So we hired her first in lockdown. Then we hired 2 other girls, and so they all 3 of them have come in really fresh into a brand. They've never worked for a clothing brand before. They've never worked sort of like in warehouse, and I'm definitely growing with them. So we're growing the warehouse manager. One's sort of growing in customer service. She's now like the retail lead, so she's sort of managing our Chadstone store. And the other girl is taking a lead in the marketing. So we literally interviewed her. She was so passionate about the brand. I was like, I really want you to work for South Street, and me and her work side by side, sort of creative marketing. And she's never done marketing before, and she's going in the role as well.
Awesome. So I'm really interested in that, right? So you, when you hired, how were you kind of hiring? So were you kind of like, okay, well, I want to bring people in that I can really connect with, and I can build a relationship with, or do I want to build in people that are highly skilled at what I'm looking for? Like, how did you kind of go about that process?
That's funny, because we were actually just having this conversation the other day. So we were looking at going down that road of hiring really skilled people. But then because of how I am, I think Dad's like, I don't advise you to hire skilled. I advise you to hire some like passionate people, girls or guys who are passionate about your brand as you are, and we sort of just grow together. So I'm quite a chilled person, so I think I probably can be a bit of a pushover sometimes, and I think he was worried about that. So every single girl we hired, apart from one in those early days, they just sent a random email to info@South Street, and it was literally just like a heartfelt email being like, absolutely love your brand. If you give me a chance to work with you, rah-de-rah. And it was just their emails that won me over. Then we sort of had an interview, and their personality just shone through. It was like, yep, done, you're hired. And the third girl who actually, we put up a CCAD, and we had all these applicants come in. I think we face-to-face interviewed 10 of them. And this girl, we laughed the entire interview. We made rude jokes. It was, she left thinking like, there's no way I've got that job. And I just connected with her so much. And it was so sort of, I don't know, it was just, you could just tell we can have an awesome relationship. It was like she could really go with South Street. So
it's so interesting, right? Because I think like the whole conception is that, you have to have the skilled, you have to, like we talk to a lot of, we've talked to a few corporates, and I think growing a small business is very different. And I think you definitely there's more than one way to skin a cat as well. And I really like the fact that that's the way you've done it, because it showed that it's worked. And it's like really, one kind of common theme is that everybody needs to be in alignment with where the brand wants to go, and needs to be super passionate about the brand. So I really love that.
Yeah.
I just think it's, it's so important.
Yeah. And I think as well, because they've been there from the start, they've seen sort of like the first warehouse, they've seen sort of like my mess of boxes and how I used to pack and everything, and they've sort of turned it around. They put their own stamp on it as well, so they're part of South Street now. So I think that there's that loyalty. They're so loyal to the brand. Amazing.
So what's the vision for the future then? So obviously, you've kind of seen some growth now, and what are your plans, and what's your vision for the future? And more importantly, what do you think the future of fashion holds?
So my plans for South Street, definitely. So I never wanted to go into retail at the start. I was so adamant online, strictly online. And then we had this, it was actually the girls that were like, no, we should do a pop-up. Let's do a pop-up in Chapel Street. And I was just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm too antisocial. You guys do, if you guys want to do it, you can organise it. And they bloody well did. So we had this pop-up on Chapel Street, and it went really well. And then we kind of got our foot in the door into retail in Chadstone, and got offered a shop there. So I think since being there, I've sort of seen how well it can do, and like you can actually meet the customers. So I'd love to take the brand to, I think, New South Wales is next, potentially Auckland, New Zealand, and then I would love to go to Europe. So maybe look at like a 3PL warehouse first in Europe, and then eventually sort of take the brand over there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I often think that we're obviously e-commerce, right? E-commerce is the bread and butter, and at the moment that's the thing that's working. But I also think stores are really brand strategies, right? They're ways that you can grow your brand and attract customers in. Because as much as you like to buy online, you still don't necessarily know whether you like the product or the fit and the so on. And And I feel like that more than anything is just brand, right? It's like, you know, if somebody comes in, it's like, oh, like that looks like a cool store, or that looks like thing. And then it's like, oh, like South Street, I've never seen those guys before. And all of a sudden it brings people in, and people can fall in love with your brand in that moment.
Yeah.
And that's, I think stores are going to become more brand strategies than anything in the future. Like, it's not going to make sense to be purely store. You're going to have to be predominantly e-commerce. But I think if you can strategically grow, like imagine you had a store in, you know, the UK, Sydney, Auckland, and so on, and you put them in these really nice spots. It's like, you know, they're probably going to make up maybe 20% of your business, 30% of your business, but what they do for the brand as a whole and the recognition and you know, it's almost like where you leverage off another brand, or like, you know, artwork on in a art gallery, right? It's like, you know, what makes art valuable is the gallery that it sits in, right? And who's backing it and where you put it.
Absolutely.
You know, like I think they did Banksy artwork where they were selling, you know, you go to any art gallery and you're buying Banksy artwork for 40, 50K, and they took the artwork, put it on the street, and nobody even stopped, right? And then somebody ended up buying it for $50. So I think, like, I look at stores like that now as I go, you know, they're really great ways to kind of create recognition and clarity around the brand and potentially capture new customers as well.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that as well, because we've been offered store spaces in, I think, Melbourne Central, like sort of up at North, Westfields, like East, and we just we just want to be, because
chatty.
Yeah, chatty. We want to be sort of like in the prestigious sort of locations. And it's the same in New Zealand, same overseas. I think that's what's going to be hard for me as well, is when we do sort of go interstate and we do go overseas, is sort of, you know, not being able to see the store. You know, what is it? Not, because at the moment, with being at Chatty, you know, it's a 20-minute drive away, so you can just go make sure everything's fine, make sure the products are perfect, whatever. But as soon as it's overseas, it's in someone else's hands, so I'm going to struggle with that. But
yeah, well, I mean, I think that's probably where you take your business to the next level, right? It's like, you know, there's letting go within one factory, and then there's, you know, the ability to build that infrastructure out, which, you know, Al Roseby, right? Like I mentioned her again, but it you kind of can see what it takes to manage a business at that level. So you got the product, right? So I think that's you've got the hardest part, and you've done it right. So I think the rest of it's just going to be infrastructure. What about marketing, right? So what have you? Because you said that you obviously do a lot of that stuff yourself as well still. So is there anything you've picked up from a marketing perspective, maybe, you know, whether around, you know, fashion and apparel and these kind of things that you've seen work really well?
Influencers. So we work with a lot of influencers. One thing I'd say about that is it's not always the big influencers that make the biggest sort of impact or the most sales. We work with a lot of micro influencers. They're more sort of trustworthy. They're not in terms of, you know, us trusting them, but their followers, because, you know, they've got a smaller fan base. Their followers trust them more. They're not sort of just a known influencer.
It's interesting, right? Because, like, influencer marketing, you know, like, it's one of those things that you think, like, because you hear people talk about it, and we've started to use it within our courses as well, and like seen massive returns on it, like massive returns. So like it's something that we were just kind of dabbling in, but we're going to go all in on it now. But it's funny, right? Because it's something that you would look at, and I feel like most business owners, and you might have felt this at the start too, but when you first get into it, you're kind of like, oh yeah, like, you know, might work well for what we do, might not. And then you kind of do it and you're like, wow, like this really works. And you know, I don't know how you guys go about it strategically, but I would assume that, like, for us, it's the best ROI, you know, compared to running ads, compared to, or, you know, the time that goes into organic social media, like influencer marketing and kind of being able to leverage off other people's networks is 100% the best ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we had, I think it was like, we're at 2,000, 3,000 followers. And do you remember of course, you were Married at First Sight, but it was the season with, is it Innes?
Yeah.
Innes, yeah. And I actually I loved her throughout the whole the season. I actually really related to her, and I was like, I actually really like this girl. And she actually matched South Street, and we were still tiny then, so I was like, oh my God, Innes is massive South Street.
Yeah.
And she wanted a few of our products, and didn't want any money, nothing, just like, I like your products, send me some and I'll send some I'll do some posts and stories. And she did, and I think that day we grew by sort of 5,000 followers overnight.
Crazy. And
so honestly, I've messaged her before, I will forever be thankful for her, because she was one of our sort of turning points. She got the brand out there. It's
crazy how like some of those minor decisions can have such a major impact.
Yeah.
Like, for us, it was probably Al, for the podcast, that episode, one of our snippets got like 1.1 million views on TikTok, and it's funny what goes viral, isn't it? It's crazy. Like, yeah, I mean, like, we kind of knew that this post was going to go well, but like, Al doesn't have a big following in SA. Like, she doesn't have a massive Instagram following. Yeah. But like, I reckon we had 100 comments on our TikToks of people that had worked at Country Road. Yeah. And said like, she's amazing. She's the best person I've ever worked with. Fantastic. So although it wasn't her following that kind of did a lot of that, it was more so the fact that like people knew who she was, and the impact that she had went so far. So, it's interesting. And then, there's a few others as well, like with our courses that are starting to make some big waves and so on. And it's often the people that you just don't think it's going to happen, right? Yeah. We had this other influencer, and she is absolutely gorgeous, stunning. I'd actually never heard of her before until she matched the page. She had, I think, 500,000 followers. And we were showing the girls, just being like, wow, like, she's a dream, and she actually wants South Street, and she wants it for, doesn't want any money for it. So we sent her some products, and we never heard from her again. And this was at the time when I was literally ordering, I think, 50 pieces of one item. So, you'd have like 10 smalls, 10 mediums, whatever. So stock was, really valuable back then. I remember sending her, I think it was like 5-6 pieces. Mm-hmm. And to me back then, that was a lot of money. That's my savings. Just never heard from her, like nothing. Ended up blocking us on Instagram as well. So it's just, and that's the tough thing with it as well, right? Like, that's the hardest part about influencer marketing as well. You've got to really do your due diligence in picking the right ones. And because it's like, when you first get into it, you're like, yeah, like anyone, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same thing. It's like, people will always promise the world and under-deliver. Yeah. And that's one thing that we found too, is like, especially for what we do, like with courses, right? Like, if somebody doesn't take the course, like, you might give them the course for free in return for like some posts and some socials. But if they don't take the course, you've just like, it's more time, than for us. But for you, it's like our stock is time, right? Like, absolutely. That's kind of how we go about it. So, influencer marketing is this big, enormous beast that can be so great for you. But on the other side of it, if you don't do your due diligence, got that one out, it can really come back to bite you as well. Absolutely. I think that's how agencies play a huge part. So they are expensive. So I think that's an extra 20% on top of the influencer's fee. But they are so good to work with in the fact, you go through them, you don't go through the influencer. We have a contract in place. You tell them like your the deliverables you want, and even if it's not right, you go back to them. They'll get the influencer to retake the photos until you're happy. So I think it definitely does work going through an agency. It's more expensive, but then again, you're going to get what you ask for. That's really interesting, like, because we haven't done that, but that might be some insight that some people can kind of look into. So there's influencer agencies now. Yeah. So we work with, I think most of the people we work with are through an agency, and then the marketing girl we have. So when I talk to people, I'm very, very, very friendly, and I think some people can mistake that for I'm very chilled. So when I talk to them before about doing like influencer posts, they would sort of just don't worry about it, and I wouldn't set that boundary. So I wouldn't say I need it by this date or this time. So they'd end up posting on like the shittest day possible, the shittest time, like 11 a.m. on a Friday when no one's on Instagram, everyone's thinking about drinking. And so I think having that marketing, the girl in marketing helping, she sort of sets contracts, and she's a lot more strict. And you do need that. Like, that's one thing that I've realized too, is like, you do need to be really clear on what is expected and what the deliverables are, everything, even like with your staff. Like, you really have to make it clear on what the expectations are and what needs to be done by what time, and the responsibilities and so on. Because you would have felt it, right, when you made your first hires, maybe outside of your dad, right? You probably underestimated what you knew and your processes, and kind of just let that kind of roll on and expected people to be able to pick it up like you, and then it obviously never occurs that way.
Yeah, that's probably one of the lessons I've learned. That's a really good point. And even 100%.
It's definitely like, and like you, that's probably something that, you know, because you're growing rapidly, right? So you're probably going through some extreme growth over the last 12 months. So you're probably learning on your feet as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about like gratitude, right, for the journey. So, how has, like, what are some of, because you know, you're a mother now as well.
Yeah.
Right. So a new, you know, you literally, is it newly mother? Is that the right word?
I'm a new mum.
New mum, right? New mum. So you know, you've obviously gone through some massive change over the last, 12 to 24 months, and you know, you're about to go into this next phase as well, right? But you know, like, what are some of the things that you're the most grateful for across the journey? You know, for yourself, for the development of yourself, and I actually want to touch on potentially some of the changes that are going to have to occur now at being a mother as well.
I was going to say so before Hunty, my daughter came along, it's probably just that full work. All I did was work. I would sort of, right up until the day she was born, it was sort of being at work from 4 a.m. till sort of 7, 8 p.m. There was no life outside of work, no social life. I think very grateful for having her because she's taught me balance. So it hits like, be at work from sort of 6 o'clock and it hits 3 o'clock and I'm like, I could stay at work, but I could go home and play with Hunty and, you know, give her a bath. And so definitely grateful for my daughter for sort of giving me that balance and so that the whole new perspective on life. It's not, you know, as good as having a brand is, it's not all about work, you know, it's life isn't just work.
So let's touch on that then, right? So what's been that perspective shift then? So what do you, like, obviously, you know,
I think before she was actually born, so I was heavily pregnant and I was still just working and we were all laughing in the warehouse and like, straight away I'm going to get a nanny, I'm going to come straight back to work. She's going to have to sort of like work around my lifestyle, that very sort of selfish, like I had no idea what I was in for sort of mindset. And as soon as she was born, it was just like, she comes first. There's no doubt about it. She will always be my baby, but Hunty is now number one. And I think, that's probably...
What do you think, what characteristics do you think she's changed in you then, right? So like, so what do you think from a characteristic standpoint that she's changed in you?
I think, God, that's a really good question.
Because I feel the same thing, right? Like one of the big things for me is, and this is only from a puppy, right? Like, but it's funny because, like, you know, when you're saying that, like, I'll probably have kids in the next 2 years, I reckon, or close to. But, you know, as soon as I got a puppy, I realized how selfish I was.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's not something that happened, you know, you kind of make those subtle changes, but it's the constant realizations, like, you know, and this sounds silly, but it's like, oh, I didn't get to walk Noah today. Well, why didn't you get a walk?
Yeah.
Right? And you would be feeling that times a million, right?
Even my dogs as well. I'm like, I didn't have dogs to the beach today, and they're kind of like looking at me. But characteristics, definitely my patience. I'm a very impatient person, very, very impatient. So I think I've had to learn how to be patient. Also, I can't get everything my own way. That's probably another thing. That's completely changed. It's all about sort of Hunty.
Do you have any advice? Because, you know, you're in business and now you're a mother, right? So what advice would you give potentially people in the same position, or maybe that could be their future?
You will never be on time ever again. You will be late to everything. No, it's probably advice. It's to definitely have in business a good support network around you. It's to have. Luckily I've got my parents. They moved down to Melbourne when they found out they're having a granddaughter. So definitely having a good support network. And honestly, you can still do it with the baby. Like you can do anything.
Do you think it's to do with the fact that you need to build the infrastructure, right? So you need to get the people in, you need to hire staff, you need to let go, and this is probably just that next revolution for you.
Absolutely. So I think as soon as I sort of told everyone at work I was having a baby, everyone sort of started pulling their weight, and we just all gearing up for me to sort of take 3 months off. I only ended up taking 2 weeks off. And it was very, very, very stressful, I think, for everyone. Those sort of a couple of weeks before I actually had Hunty, I was very stressed out that I was going to be leaving the business. I wouldn't be able to come in. And I think everyone felt that pressure. But it's definitely just having a plan. I plan my day sort of every night before the next day. I get everything ready. Like, you need to be organised, so I get all my bags ready for the next day. And you got to sort of just your expectations as well. Like, sometimes you're not going to make it in time for a meeting, just letting people know, you got your baby. But definitely, you hit the nail on the head. It's sort of setting up to have that baby, and I think the girls at South Street really helped me with that. Yeah,
amazing. I think the highlight that we can make is that, I think any business, no matter what your circumstance, so it really is about being able to let go and get the right people around you and start to build that out. And that's one of the biggest learning curves you go through. And I'm excited to see, because you got some big plans, so I'm really excited to see how that works for you, and you obviously how motherhood changes things and how you adapt. So it's gonna be great to see. We're gonna dive into quickfire.
Cool.
Ooh.
Okay, so now you're under the pump. So quick. This is basically short, sharp questions that we've kind of done a bit of research into, and giving your perspective, because as much as sometimes we don't think people want to hear it, they do, right? Because you're doing great things. So we're going to get those up on the screen, and I'll ask you those.
Now I'm nervous.
Cool. So what is your one wish for future women in business?
Oh, that's a good question. What is your one wish for future women in business? My one wish would be... God, that's a hard question. Definitely to be kind to each other, and... Now you put me on the spot.
Do you think it would be, so what about some of your past experiences? So what do you wish from that standpoint?
Honestly, not to take shit. just don't take shit from nobody. Just be your own boss and just go for it. I think a lot of women hold back, and men as well hold back, and fear of being criticised, whatever, and just turn all that criticism into constructive criticism, and then just do your own thing anyway.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so this is an interesting one, right? Because I look at your story, and I think the thing that maybe changed everything for you is your ability to take the leap on your idea, on your passion. So what piece of advice would you give people who are yet to take that leap?
Biggest advice, it's not easy. Like, it is not easy. You are going to put your heart and soul into this. If it's going to work, it's time, it's effort, it's money. It's like, do not go into it thinking it's easy, because it's not. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And to this day, it's still hard. I'm still learning. I'm still growing every single day. Have good days, have bad days. It'd be to not go into it thinking it's easy.
Is it worth it?
It is so worth it. It is so worth it. And you'll be, at the start, you'll be judged, you'll be criticised, people will fall out of you because you're not fun anymore, you don't go out drinking, but at the end of the day, you're the one that's winning. So
awesome. I love that. Okay, so what's the one thing you think people shouldn't forget when starting a business?
Probably the last thing I said, but also...
Why do you do what you do, right? Like, why do you push yourself?
Because I absolutely love it. When I'm designing clothes and I'm making, it's kind of clothes that I'd wear, so it's just that passion. So I think... just never forget why you started, I guess. It's probably a very cliche one.
It is, but I think it's so true, right? It's very easy in business when tough times come and obstacles arise. It's very easy to forget why you actually got into this in the first place. For me, that question is never forget never forget why you started. Never forget why you love it, and focus on what you love. And do the things you love to do. Do the things that excite you, because it's you have to be doing those things in order for it to be sustainable. Like imagine you doing what you're doing now and you didn't like designing.
Oh my Lord, it would be a tough job. That would be a tough job.
Yeah, so I think like that's one of those things, and I think everyone needs to remember is do what you love, and more importantly, remember what you love as you're building your business, because it's very easy to forget.
Absolutely. And honestly, another thing on that as well is just don't take things personally as well. That's one thing I've learned in business, is just to sort of...
What do you mean by that?
I think how you're dealing with a lot of different people, like customers, even like delivery people, people like employees, and people can sort of project, and you can take things on board, like you can take things really personally. You can make you feel really upset, like certain emails you get, whatever. It's just not take it personally, like it's not you. That's
some really good advice, because I think one thing as a business owner is you're so emotionally attached to your own baby, to your own business, and you often forget that you just don't know what someone else is going through, right? They could be having a bad day, they could be having a bad week,
absolutely.
They could be going through problems and so on, and then that if you take that on board yourself and you kind of take on that energy, that can reflect in the decisions you make and the things that you do.
100%, yeah.
Awesome.
We've got one more.
Ooh, what has played the biggest role in South Street's success thus far? I think my dedication. I think it's my work ethic, and I think a lot of people have actually said it to me. It's like I admire work ethic. I think I've given South Street my whole life. To start South Street, I stopped everything. I said before, socialising. I stopped spending money. Stopped going out drinking. I stopped absolutely everything. I've lost a lot of friends on the way. I've had broken relationships.
It's funny though, right? The people who should be there usually are still there.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll have friends I haven't spoken to in months that I used to sort of, be really good friends with, and then you just get a random message just being like, just thinking of you, can see you hustling, can't wait to catch up. And they're always there, they're always clapping with your successes. And
it's interesting,
buying.
It's not always the ones that you were closest with,
No,
right? Like sometimes it's the ones that were, you mentioned it before, is like the journey of business, because there is a lot of sacrifice involved, usually means that some people can take it personally. And the it's weird, like, you kind of, I'm in the same boat, like, 2-3 years later, you kind of like, some people are really happy for you, some people are still really sour, and it's usually the ones that you don't suspect, right? That are ones that are the ones that actually care and kind of just accept you for what you're doing, and that relationship with them never changes.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we all have that person who we haven't seen in a year or 2 years, and it's like as soon as you see them, it's like boom boom, like it's like it's still kind of the relationship hasn't changed, it's not awkward, it's not hard to talk to them.
Yeah. And they're just happy for you that you're doing your own thing, that you're happy and that you're successful, and
they're the people you want to surround yourself with.
Absolutely. And it's a shame that some of the closest people to you can be the people that sort of back off, and they aren't the ones that are clapping. So.
Do you have any advice around that? Right. So how did you deal with that? Because you said your dedication, so were you just like head down, like I've got a vision and I'm going to achieve it?
Absolutely. I was kind of, there was no stopping me. There was absolutely no stopping me. I remember going to someone's birthday party once, and there was a girl there that just gave me so much shit because I hadn't been going out drinking. I remember like leaving in tears because they were just being quite bitchy, and it was literally just because I was working, and I just don't think she liked that. I sort of just pushed everyone sort of away, and I was working my own thing. But then it was a couple of months ago, and she actually messaged me. She's like, "I'm so sorry. South Street is such a cool brand. So sorry for acting like that." And to me, that was just like
and that's usually how it goes, right? Like, and I think that's a good message for anyone. Is like, you said it, don't take things personally, but I think more so is that if you have a vision and you believe in something, you know, that's a selfish endeavor, and it has to be.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
for you to get that to where you want to get it to, sorry, you know, you have to put in that work, and some people aren't going to be happy with it.
Yeah.
But it's always those people who come back to you and turn around and say, I'm sorry, or congratulations.
Absolutely.
And it happens, you know, like I was the same, you know, I was the larrikin in the group. I was the party boy in the group.
Yeah.
I was that guy. And then I completely shut it all off. You know, I didn't drink for, I think, 12 months. And I, you know, now I probably do once or twice a year. Yeah. Right. And people come back, and it's usually the ones who were a bit sour at the time, and they do come around. So if you're going through that at the moment, and it is something you struggle with, keep going. Yeah. Right.
Keep going. Don't stop. Don't stop for nobody. Just keep going. Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Rock and roll. Harl, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on the show. I think what you're doing is very inspirational, and I think there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this, and they're going to get something massive out of it, right? And that's Beautiful. That you can, you know, if you got an idea and something you're passionate about, you can take that leap. Yeah. You know, you can do it as a mother. You know, there's a lot of things that you're doing that you should be really proud of. And I think that, as I said, there's going to be a lot of people that listen to this, and you know, hopefully you're the inspiration that allows them to start, you know, chasing their passion as well.
Thank you. And can I just add on that as well? So there's been absolutely no background experience with fashion or design. So you honestly, like, you can do anything. You really can, because I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to stitch or, you know, different fabrics. I've taught myself along the way. So just honestly, just go for it. If you're passionate, you're going to put the work in. You got the time. Just do it. So.
Amazing. What we'll do, we'll give. So where can people find you? Where can people find the brand? What's your website? We'll plug South Street.
Do you want me to give them to you now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So website is www.southstreet.com.au, and our Instagram is @south.st. Yeah. And my personal Instagram is @HarleyRay with 2 A's.
Awesome. It's guys. I wear these clothes like religiously. So I'm a massive fan. So definitely go check them out. They got some. I love it. It's comfy. It's stylish. I'm pretty sure I've got some photo shoots with some of them on as well, just from our previous episodes. But go check it out, guys. And more importantly, you know, take a lot away from this, because I think what Harl's is doing, as I said, is very inspirational. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks again, Harl, for coming on. And we'll see you guys on the other side.
See ya.